It's 1996. The Spice Girls are everywhere. Jerry Maguire is in theaters and the Olympics are underway in Atlanta. That same year, Purdue Pharma launches OxyContin. They call it a breakthrough. 12 hours of reliable pain relief with almost no risk of addiction. Abuse-resistant, they promise. Sales reps flood doctors' offices with one seductive message. This is safe, effective, and the solution to America's pain epidemic. Doctors believe the pitch. Prescriptions explode. By 2001, OxyContin is generating over $1 billion a year. The Sackler family becomes obscenely wealthy, but it was all built on a lie. Purdue knew OxyContin was highly addictive. They knew patients were crushing the pills for a powerful high, yet they kept pushing higher doses and stronger marketing. What followed became one of the deadliest public health crises in American history. Today we follow the lies from compassionate medicine to a corporate empire built on addiction and unimaginable suffering. Welcome to Follow the Lies, Fraud and Deceit Uncovered. I'm Kevin Barrows. I'm a former FBI special agent and lead case agent on two of the largest white-collar investigations in U.S. history. I've spent 30 years investigating how deception hides inside seemingly legitimate businesses. But cases like Purdue Pharma are on a different level. This wasn't just financial fraud or accounting tricks. This was corporate deception that directly contributed to hundreds of thousands of deaths and ruined millions of lives. If you're enjoying these podcasts, please hit subscribe, leave a rating and review, and tap the bell so you never miss an episode. And if you want a guide to help you spot lies in business or everyday life, I created a free guide called 7 Proven Strategies to Spot Lies and Uncover the Truth in Any Interview. You can find it at followtheliespodcast.com. Now let's get back to how this deadly deception actually began and how Purdue turned a dangerous opioid into $1 billion empire. OxyContin itself was not a new drug when Purdue Pharma launched OxyContin in 1996. The opioid had been synthesized in Germany in 1916 by chemists Martin Freund and Edmund Speyer. It saw first clinical use in 1917 and was introduced to the U.S. markets in the 1930s in immediate-release forms, such as Percodan, where it was typically combined with aspirin or acetaminophen. For decades, OxyContin was used in relatively small doses for moderate to severe pain. It was just one of the many opioid medications available to doctors, and its addictive potential was well understood within the medical community. What Purdue did in 1996 was something far more ambitious and transformative. They introduced OxyContin, an extended-release formulation of oxycodone designed to deliver the drug slowly over 12 hours. The company positioned it as a breakthrough in pain management, a single pill that could provide all-day relief for patients suffering from moderate to severe chronic pain, from back injuries to arthritis to cancer-related pain. The launch of OxyContin was accompanied by one of the most aggressive and sophisticated marketing campaigns in pharmaceutical history. Purdue trained a large group of sales representatives, more than 1,000 at its peak, to visit doctors' offices across the country. Special emphasis was placed on rural and suburban areas where pain management was believed to be underserved. These reps were given substantial bonuses based on the volume of prescriptions they generated, creating intense pressure to sell as much OxyContin as possible. The core message was simple, seductive, and incredibly effective. OxyContin provided 12 hours of reliable pain relief with a much lower risk of addiction than immediate-release opioids. Purdue heavily promoted a single decades-old 1980 letter published in the New England Journal of Medicine that claimed addiction was rare in patients treated with opioids for pain. Company representatives cited this letter repeatedly in sales pitches, even though internal studies and real-world data showed the opposite. Purdue instructed salespeople to tell physicians that less than 1% of patients would become addicted, a claim the company knew was not supported by evidence. Purdue took this single, cherry-picked letter and turned it into a marketing gospel. Sales representatives were trained to quote it constantly, even handing out laminated copies to doctors. Internally, Executives referred to it as their trump card. Sales representatives were trained to overcome doctors' concerns about addiction by emphasizing the abuse-deterrent properties of the pill's coating. They hosted lavish dinners for physicians, sponsored continuing medical education courses, and distributed promotional materials that minimized the risks. As prescriptions skyrocketed, so did abuse. Patients quickly discovered that crushing the tablets released the full 12-hour dose at once, producing a powerful euphoric high. Purdue executives were aware of this problem as early as the late 1990s. Company records from the late 1990s and early 2000s show officials discussing the growing problem of diversion and abuse, yet the marketing machine kept running at full speed. Instead of pulling back, Purdue introduced a new abuse-deterrent formulation in 2010, while continuing to market the original version aggressively until it was discontinued. Purdue's own internal projections showed they expected many patients to need steadily increasing doses over time, a phenomenon they referred to as dose escalation. Rather than viewing this as a warning sign of addiction, the company saw it as a growth opportunity. Sales forecasts were built around the assumption that patients would stay on the drug for years, not weeks or months. This long-term dependency model was baked into the business plan from the beginning. The Sackler family, who owned Purdue, pushed relentlessly for higher sales targets. Richard Sackler was deeply involved, personally pressing executives in emails to focus on doctors writing the highest volumes of prescriptions. The family extracted more than $13 billion in profits from Purdue between 2008 and 2016, while the opioid crisis raged across America. Richard treated the opioid crisis like a business opportunity. In internal emails, he pushed the team to view every doctor as a potential high-volume prescriber. The family's fortune grew dramatically, while small towns across America were being gutted by addiction. Purdue wasn't just selling a pill. They were selling a vision of pain-free living that millions of Americans desperately wanted to believe in. One particularly disturbing internal email from Richard Sackler in 2001 asked his team, "How do we make this drug a blockbuster while managing the abuse problem?" Rather than reducing sales efforts, the company responded by developing elaborate tracking systems to identify and target the highest prescribing doctors, sometimes referred to internally as pill mills. The more prescriptions written, the bigger the bonuses for sales reps. Profit and volume became the only metrics that mattered. One memo from a Purdue sales manager instructed reps to sell the sizzle and focus on the financial incentives for doctors rather than the clinical risks. A particularly revealing internal strategy document outlined a plan to expand the market by targeting opioid-naive patients who had never taken strong painkillers before. Purdue wanted to move OxyContin upstream in the treatment ladder, from last resort medication to severe cancer pain to a first-line option for common conditions like back pain and arthritis. This dramatically expanded the pool of potential users and the overall volume of the pills sold. The deception was multi-layered. Purdue not only minimized the risks in public marketing, but also worked behind the scenes to influence medical guidelines, pain management standards, and even regulatory oversight. The company funded research, sponsored key opinion leaders, and shaped the narrative that America was suffering from an undertreated pain epidemic. This narrative helped create a cultural shift where opioids became the default solution for a wide range of conditions, dramatically expanding the market for OxyContin and similar drugs. By the mid-2000s, the human cost was becoming impossible to ignore. Yet Purdue continued to deny the scale of the problem, fought against any restrictions on OxyContin, and even blamed abusers rather than the drug's addictive properties. The first major cracks appeared in the early 2000s, when individual lawsuits and state investigations began to surface. Families who had lost loved ones to addiction started filing suits, alleging that Purdue had knowingly downplayed the addictive nature of OxyContin. State attorneys general also began probing the company's marketing practices. In 2007, Purdue and 3 top executives pleaded guilty to federal charges of misleading the public and regulators about OxyContin's addiction risk. The company paid a $634 million fine, and the executives paid personal fines totaling $34.5 million. However, no one went to prison, and the aggressive marketing of OxyContin continued virtually unchanged. This relatively light punishment sent a clear message to the company. The risks were manageable, and the profits were worth it. After this slap on the wrist in 2007, the company barely slowed down. Sales continued to climb for years. It wasn't until the flood of lawsuits in 2018 and 2019, over 2,000 of them from cities, counties, states, and devastated families, that the full scope of the deception started coming into public view. The discovery process turned over millions of pages of internal records that painted a damning picture of what executives knew and when they knew it. Despite the fine in 2007, the Sackler family continued to receive large dividends from Purdue. As lawsuits mounted, the family began moving money out of the company through complex trusts and offshore structures, shielding their personal wealth from the future claims. This financial maneuvering would later become a major point of contention in bankruptcy court. Documents released during discovery revealed years of deceptive marketing, deliberately downplaying of risks, and relentless sales pressure. One internal document showed executives celebrating the fact that OxyContin was being prescribed in higher doses because higher doses generate higher profits. Congress held high-profile hearings. The House Oversight Committee subpoenaed Richard Sackler and other family members. Whistleblowers and former employees came forward, describing a corporate culture that punished questions and rewarded volume at all costs. One former sales representative testified that the bonus structure rewarded volume above all else, even when doctors raised concerns. Victim stories began to emerge publicly with heartbreaking clarity. In one widely reported case, a mother from Oklahoma described how her son was prescribed OxyContin for sports injury and became addicted within weeks. He eventually died of an overdose at age 22. Another family from West Virginia lost their 19-year-old daughter to an accidental overdose after she was prescribed the drug for wisdom tooth pain. A father from Ohio testified before Congress that his son started with a legitimate prescription for back pain and died from an overdose 7 years later. These stories multiplied across the country as lawsuits revealed that Purdue had tracked high-prescribing doctors and encouraged sales reps to focus on them. The Sackler family's role came under intense scrutiny. Emails showed Richard Sackler pushing for higher sales even as overdose deaths climbed. One email from Richard in the early 2000s suggested the company should hammer the market and focus on higher dose prescriptions. As the lawsuits mounted, the family attempted to shield their personal wealth. In 2019, Purdue filed for bankruptcy. The Sackler family initially sought immunity from future civil lawsuits in exchange for a multi-billion-dollar settlement. The deal was highly controversial. Victims' families in many states opposed it fiercely, arguing that the Sacklers should not be allowed to keep billions of dollars while thousands of families suffered the consequences of the crisis they helped create. Some family members had already moved billions of dollars out of Purdue through dividends and other mechanisms in the years leading up to the bankruptcy filing. After years of legal battles, a federal judge rejected the initial bankruptcy plan in 2021. The case dragged on through appeals and negotiations. Eventually, in 2024, the Sackler family agreed to pay billions more and give up ownership of Purdue in a revised settlement. The company was restructured, and its assets were directed towards opioid abatement programs, addiction treatment, and victim compensation. Now let's go inside the investigation, where I go behind the scenes and explain how the prosecution unfolded. The question I'm asked most often is simple. Why weren't Richard Sackler or any of the members of the family charged criminally? After all, the company itself admitted to years of illegal conduct, and internal records show the Sacklers closely controlled Purdue and pushed aggressively for higher sales. The answer is more nuanced than many people realize. Federal prosecutors face a high bar when pursuing individual executives. They must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the person personally knew about the criminal conduct and specifically intended it. In complex pharmaceutical cases, that burden is notoriously difficult to meet. While the Sacklers clearly exerted enormous pressure to increase sales, proving they directed specific criminal acts with the intent to cause harm is a steep hill. In the end, the Justice Department secured an $8 billion settlement and a corporate guilty plea. Many victims' families felt this was not enough, that the architects of the crisis were allowed to walk away with billions. That frustration is understandable. But from an investigator's perspective, charging high-level executives and winning in court is far more difficult than most people appreciate. The Purdue Pharma case stands out as one of the clearest and most devastating examples in modern history of how corporate deception, when executed with precision and greed, can cause widespread generational harm on a national scale. Internal documents released during litigation revealed that Purdue executives knew OxyContin was highly addictive. They knew patients were crushing the pills for a powerful high. They knew the 12-hour relief claim was failing in real-world use. Yet they chose to minimize, conceal, and outright deny these risks in order to protect and maximize sales. On the deception spectrum, this case sits at the highest end. It wasn't the impulsive act of a single rogue employee. It was a calculated, long-term, institutionalized campaign that combined sophisticated marketing, misleading scientific claims, aggressive sales incentives, a network of paid key opinion leaders, and a deliberate willingness to put corporate profits ahead of public safety on a massive scale. According to CDC data, more than 500,000 Americans have died from opioid overdoses since 1999, many linked to the overprescribing of OxyContin in the early years of the crisis. Entire communities, particularly in Appalachia and the Midwest, were devastated as addiction spread through families and generations. The economic cost in healthcare, lost productivity, criminal justice, and social services runs into the hundreds of billions of dollars. The Sackler family, who owned Purdue Pharma, profited enormously from the drug. When the lawsuits finally closed in, the Sackler family attempted to use the bankruptcy process to shield their assets. For years, they fought to obtain immunity from future civil claims. While Purdue itself pleaded guilty to felony charges, no member of the Sackler family has faced criminal prosecution to date. This outcome left many victims' families feeling that justice had not been served, that the architects of the crisis walked away with billions while thousands mourned their loved ones. What made Purdue's conduct especially damaging was how it corrupted institutions that were supposed to protect the public. When the truth finally emerged, it wasn't just a company that fell. It was trust in the entire system of pharmaceutical oversight. The core lesson from Purdue Pharma is both simple and profound. When a company's financial incentives are perfectly aligned with maximizing the use of a dangerous product, and when regulatory oversight is weak or captured, deception can flourish with catastrophic consequences for society, and human lives become collateral damage. This case reminds us that the most dangerous lies are often the ones wrapped in the language of compassion and healing. Each episode, I'll share a lie detector tip, a practical, field-tested piece of advice drawn from real investigations to help you spot deception or protect yourself from situations where it becomes far more likely. Today's lie detector tip is about spotting corporate deception when it hides behind a noble cause. When a company tells you their product will ease suffering, save lives, or solve a major societal problem, pause and ask yourself, who is benefiting the most if this story is true? And who benefits if it's not? In the Purdue case, the powerful narrative of compassionate pain relief was used to justify pushing a highly addictive drug on millions of people. The public story sounded moral. The internal reality was ruthless. My advice is that when profit and compassion are claimed at the same time, look at the incentives, not just the marketing. Extraordinary claims still require extraordinary evidence, especially when human lives are on the line. If a company fights transparency, pressures people to move fast, or dismisses safety concerns as obstacles, you're looking at a major red flag. Trust your instincts. When something feels too perfect, it usually isn't. From a blockbuster pain medication to one of the deadliest public health crises in American history, the Purdue Pharma story remains a stark warning about what happens when corporate greed is allowed to operate without sufficient oversight. Has a company, product, or deal ever raised red flags for you? Something that felt off, or where the promises seemed too smooth? Send your story to Kevin at followtheliespodcast.com. It might become a future episode. If you want practical tools to help you spot lies and protect yourself from deception, grab my free guide, 7 Proven Strategies to Spot Lies and Uncover the Truth in Any Interview. It's available right now at followtheliespodcast.com. While you're there, I'd love for you to join our growing community on Substack at followthelies.substack.com, where I share regular notes, deeper dives, and extra lie detector tips. If you're enjoying these deep dives, please hit subscribe, leave a rating and review, and tap the bell so you never miss an episode. Thanks for listening. Until next time, follow the lies.